Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbity Bobbity Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my September reading wrap up. So I am aware that this wrap up is coming to you quite late. We're already towards the end of October, but October has just been a crazy month for me, so I'm just catching up. And yeah, I was going to do like a joint September and October wrap up, but then I figured I'll probably have loads of books to talk about and it would be a really long video, so I thought better late than never. So here we are. So yeah, I think I read 5 books in September and I really enjoyed pretty much everything that I read, so it was a good reading month for me, which is great because I had a really bad reading month in August. So I'm glad that I've kind of got back into the swing of things, and yeah, let's just jump straight in. So the first book that I read in September was Nod, written by Adrian Barnes. So this is a horror novel, a adult horror novel, and the premise is that there is a global phenomenon that happens that basically prevents the whole of humanity from being able to sleep. There are just a few rare people who are able to sleep at night. I think it's 1 in every 1,000 people can actually sleep, and they are essentially forced to watch the rest of humanity descend into chaos and panic and madness. And it's very much a story of psychosis and of societal collapse, and it's really heavy and really dark. I can't emphasize that enough. There are some truly horrific scenes in here, so please do check out content warnings before going into this one. And in this story we follow our main character. I think his name is Paul, and he is actually one of the lucky few who can actually sleep at night, but he is essentially forced to watch his partner descend into madness along with the rest of humanity because she can't sleep at night. And we know that, you know, you only can go for a few days without sleep before, you know, you start to see things, you start to get paranoid, you start to lose your mind. And so he's watching his loved one kind of slip away in front of his eyes. And what I will say is our main character isn't particularly likeable. He's quite a pessimistic character. He has a very negative outlook on humanity. He kind of views what is happening to society as kind of like an exposure of what humanity truly is. He feels like this global phenomenon has kind of broken the seal and kind of revealed the darkness of humanity. So it is quite a depressing read, being inside his head. And it also has quite a flowery writing style. I'm not sure if flowery is the right word to use, but our main character is basically someone who loves language. He actually studies the origins of words, and so this whole book is told from his point of view. It's essentially his journal entries as he's kind of experiencing day life after this phenomenon. And so he has this real kind of overwritten, slightly pretentious voice, which is entirely intentional, but it does make the reading experience a little bit more challenging. It takes time to kind of read this one, or at least it did for me. And yeah, there's a quote that I wanted to share with you from this book, which I feel like sums up its tone. So the quote is, "Life's a scab and it's our nature to pick at it until it bleeds." So I feel like that just gives you an idea of kind of, yeah, the tone of this book. So would I say I had an enjoyable reading experience? Probably not. Is it something that will stick with me forever? Absolutely. It was one of the most horrific things that I've ever read, and so I guess it did what it set out to do. Okay, so next up we have another horror book, but this one is much lighter than Nod. This is A House with Good Bones, written by T. Kingfisher. So this is an adult story and it follows a woman who goes back to visit her mum because she spoke to her brother and her brother raised some concerns about her mum. He says she's acting a little bit weird, and so our main character goes basically to go and check on her, and when she arrives at the house she quickly realizes that something is in fact off because her mum has redecorated the whole house. So the house used to belong to her grandmother before she passed away, and when she died her mum sort of redecorated everything to make it more in her taste. So she painted all the rooms all these bright colours and everything, but now everything is whitewashed again, and her mum has even put up a picture that her grandmother used to like, this horrible picture on the wall, and it's just all very, very strange. And yeah, that's the setting for the story. There's also her grandmother's rose garden out the back, which is growing abundantly despite the fact that our main character's mum doesn't have green fingers and she doesn't really do anything to the garden or make any effort to keep these roses alive, but yet they are blooming wildly. And yeah, this one was a lot of fun. There are definitely some creepy moments in here, some kind of naturey type horror, but it is balanced with a lot of humour in the dialogue. That's something that T. Kingfisher does so well, and it also has some really lovable characters in here that you can't help but root for. And all in all, it had quite a uplifting and cozy feel. There was also a bit of a romance in here as well, which isn't essential for the plot at all, but was just a lovely little sprinkling of coziness on top. So yeah, I would definitely describe this as a cozy horror, if that's a thing. And I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up we have another horror book. This is The Haar, written by David Sodergren. This is a horror story about an elderly woman in her 80s who lives in this remote fishing village in Scotland, and she is essentially being threatened by this billionaire who essentially is trying to buy up the land around her, buy up the land where she lives, to build this golf resort. And she understandably doesn't want to leave her home. She doesn't want to be bought out of the place where she's lived for her whole life, and so she is very resistant to this man coming in and trying to change everything. And it's definitely a story about grief and loss. So our main character lost her husband, and she also is losing her friends around her who are slowly leaving, and you know, she's having to witness change. You know, this village where she has all of these really special memories, where she's lived her whole life, is being changed and is not pleasant, and she is treated horrifically by some of the people in here. You really feel sorry for her and her situation. And then one day this sea mist blows inland, and it brings with it some horrors that might just be our main character's redemption. And that is all I'm going to say, because I don't want to give anything away. But what I will say is this is incredibly graphic and gory. The story is definitely blood soaked, it's gruesome, it's gritty, so don't go into this one if you don't enjoy those things, or if you're faint-hearted, because there are some really graphic scenes in here. But it's so compelling. You can't help but root for our main character. She's also really interesting as a woman. She's very multifaceted. There's definitely themes of grief and loss, and you can see that she's very much blinded by her grief at times. There's also a little bit of an exploration into obsession in this story, and she's just so complex and interesting as a character. And this also has some really touching moments in there as well. I remember being surprisingly moved by the ending. It almost has quite a sentimental quality to it as well. So despite all of the gore and the guts and the blood and everything like that, it does have some kind of sentimental moments in there too, which is something that I really wasn't expecting from this. So yeah, I would highly recommend this to you if you enjoy a gory horror, if you like monster horrors, and if you think that it sounds interesting, because I had a great time with this one. Okay, so the next book that I read was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is a book that I borrowed from my friend, so I don't actually have the physical copy with me at the moment, but I'll put a picture up on the screen for you. This is a incredible science fiction novel, and it's a sci-fi that uses time travel to explore some really difficult and interesting themes with a lot of nuance. So in this story we follow our main character, who is a black woman who is from the 70s, and she essentially gets pulled back in time to the 1800s. And of course, being back in that time is incredibly dangerous for her, because it is a time where slavery was a thing and she doesn't have free papers. So it's very much a story of survival and fear and oppression, and it deals with a lot of themes of generational trauma and institutionalized oppression and the normalization of abuse and violence that was really present in those times. And it is truly harrowing at times. These themes are all explored by the author, basically putting our main character in these really awful, distressing situations that make us feel incredibly uncomfortable as a reader, but at the same time makes us really compelled to keep reading and turning the pages. And what I really enjoyed about this book is that everything was done so carefully and with a lot of nuance. I think I said that before, but for example, our main character has quite a lot of conflicting feelings, and you know, she isn't always consistent. She has a lot of very complex relationships with those people around her, and I really enjoy that about her character because it's not black and white. You know, she has some difficult emotions and difficult feelings, and she's trying to figure it all out for herself alongside just trying to survive in this time, you know, where she's essentially being kidnapped and treated as a slave, but at the same time she is different from the other slaves around her because she's educated, she speaks differently, so she doesn't really fit in with them, and it's just so interesting. So yeah, this is a very heavy book, but I feel like it was done incredibly well with a lot of care and attention. And yeah, I will say that it doesn't go into much detail about the sci-fi elements. That's more just a device for us to explore some of those themes, so there's not much information about why this time traveling thing is happening. You kind of have to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, if you know what I mean. You have to not ask too many questions about that side of things and just appreciate that it is used as a tool to unpack some really interesting and difficult themes. So yeah, I very much enjoyed this one. I thought our main character was fascinating, such a interesting heroine, and just a very fascinating story to follow. So yeah, highly recommend that one to you if you haven't read it already. Okay, and the final book that I read in September was Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. This is the third book in the Dresden Files series, which is a expansive fantasy series that is much loved and it is essentially like a fantasy noir because we follow our main character Harry Dresden, who is a wizard, but he's also a detective. So he lives in Chicago, and basically when the police come across a situation that they can't explain by rational means, they call upon Harry Dresden to investigate the supernatural, essentially. So if there's something that's weird and wonky and they don't understand, they call on Harry Dresden to come and investigate and help them solve the cases. And I didn't really love the first couple of books in this series. It felt very monster of the week, kind of episodic in nature, whereas I feel like this book is the first book where things start to feel a little bit more expansive. It feels like the plot is finally, like the overarching plot is finally taking off, and you can tell that the quality has improved quite a lot in terms of the writing and also in terms of the world building. So I really enjoyed it for that reason. There are still a lot of things that I find very cringy about this series and about the main character's voice. He can come across as a real chauvinistic pig at times, and yeah, those things really do irk me. But there are also a lot of things that I really enjoy about this. I'm enjoying finding out a little bit more about the lore in this world, about the different fantastical creatures. This one has quite a lot of discussion about vampires, so we find out about the different groups of vampires that exist in this world and how all that politics works. And we also get the introduction of a new character called Michael in this story, who is actually one of my favourite characters in this world. So I really enjoyed his character. He is a very religious man. He's kind of the opposite of Harry Dresden in a way. He is very religious, as I said, and his power comes from his intense faith in God, and he can be quite black and white because he's you know, very much like that. Everything is very much, you know, God is the answer. You know, all you have to do is have faith, and he's kind of the opposite of Harry, who is much more sarcastic, much more less positive, and yeah, so I just really enjoyed the contrast between the two characters, but also the friendship that they have and the bond. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing more from that character. I hope that he crops up in future books as well. So yeah, I have a bit of a mixed opinion, mixed relationship with the Dresden Files books, but I am assured by my partner and other people that the series just continues to get better and better, and there are quite a lot of things that I do enjoy about it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, and I'm hoping that some of those things that really bug me kind of get ironed out the further that we go through the series, but we shall see. Anyway, that brings me to the end of this wrap-up video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you've read any of these books before, because I'd love to have a chat with you about them in the comments, or let me know what you've picked up recently. Again, I'd love to have a little chat with you. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and do subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!